In the current age we live in, everybody at some point in their life, regardless of standing or state, is exposed to influence. It's in your TV, school, workplace, but it's not always external. Even internally, you'll find yourself wrestling with your genetics that predisposition you to certain manners. As for the effect to which these influences can be positive, it goes without saying that they can exist, but the motive for these forces might not always be for your best interest, regardless of their source. For that reason, I want to keep the spotlight on the negative, since they possess the potential to lead a man astray and into chaos. Now, if you'll observe, we've identified both social and physical influences, but haven't yet discerned the spiritual. In the Abrahamic religions, there exists the concept of Satan, and for this creature, he is a force that God defines in the Holy Quran, chapter 35, verse 6. Surely Satan is an enemy to you. His greatest weapon is described as whispers, meant to distract and persuade you into self-destruction. It's vital that to understand the concept discussed next, that the acknowledgement of subtle control and programming that you might not even be aware is happening to you. The self-struggle, or in Arabic Islamic theology, jihad al-nafs. The word jihad is defined by the Arabic dictionary as meaning striving or struggling, especially with a praiseworthy aim. Al-nafs can be broken down into al, which means the, and nafs, which is synonymous with the self. So you have jihad al-nafs, the self-struggle, which comes down to conquering your own inner demons, reversing the programming that was done subtly, subconsciously, and subliminally. This allows one to become the master of their own destiny and truly feel that the choices they make were their own. That's a priceless freedom. Allah says in the Quran, Surah 91:9, by the soul and by He who made it perfect, and then inspired it to understand what is wrong and what is right for it. Truly successful the one who purifies his soul. To further elaborate on what those inner demons are, we can start with our own evolutionary psychology. We are driven by animalistic instincts, well documented in evolutionary literature, with the basic goal of maintaining our genetic line. Reproduction is seen as life's ultimate purpose. In The Moral Animal by Robert Wright, he says the following: natural selection wants us to behave in certain ways, but so long as we comply, it doesn't care whether we are made happy or sad in the process. Whether we get physically mangled, even whether we die. The only thing natural selection ultimately wants to keep in good shape is the information in our genes. It will countenance any suffering on our part that serves this purpose. This is the gateway to hedonism, and a path where self-gratification can only be given to you by a woman's validation through sex and ultimately children. Thus, you're constantly using time, money, and resources in pursuit of it, rearranging your routine, goals, and values to align with achieving it. Even worse is for the men who give in to this demon but constantly fall short of ever getting to the goal. They end up turning to virtual sex, whether it's watching others engage in it, paying money to purchase acknowledgement and interaction, delving into erotic cartoons and comics, or even buying toys and indulging in them to simulate the experience. Society will have you believe this is normal, and it encourages it actively. Don't give in to this influence, regardless of the temptations. Lust should never be a driving motivation for a man's purpose. It would only lead you to ruin. Do some self-reflection. Ask yourself how much of what you're currently doing is for the promise of sex in the future. We have a hadith here by Sufyan al-Thawri. He was asked about the following verse, "And man is created weak. What is this weakness?" He replied, "A woman will pass by a man, and he cannot restrain himself from looking at her, although there is no benefit in it. Is there anything weaker than this?" Ali ibn Abu Talib said the following: the intellect and lust are opposite to each other. Knowledge supports the intellect while the lust is supported by the passions and inordinate desires. Self is a battlefield where wars wage between the intellect and lust. Whoever becomes victorious in this fight takes control of the self. Moving on to social temptations, you'll find early on in your life that peer pressure will get you to conform. That threat of shaming will have you participating and performing in acts that deep inside you know just isn't you. God says in Quran chapter 10 verse 65, "Do not let their words grieve you." A man should know his own heart and strive to only perform acts for his own betterment, and because he's put thought into it. The blind should never lead the blind. Mob mentality is a dangerous disease. It erases innovation and prosperity, while simultaneously criticizing freethinkers. The Ash conformity experiment demonstrated that, as long as the group thought tells you that you're wrong, you'll eventually give in to their reality, despite logic and reasoning telling you that they are wrong. This influence, more so than the others, tends to be subtle. If you look back with an open mind and a clear lens, you'll even see it in your schooling. The movies you've seen, the books you've read, songs you listen to, the news you hear, and even the religion you practice. Don't be of the group that inherits your thoughts and beliefs. Practice critical thinking skills and question everything until you are satisfied. That should be of the utmost importance for your own satisfaction. Even now, there are forces at work to corrupt your minds and have you subscribe to their agenda. One who is controlled by these malevolent tactics has their freedom in peril, and perhaps can only be actively participating in not only their own downfall, but the decline of their own brothers. Be a warrior who stands for noble values because you found them to be true, not a soldier who was indoctrinated by propaganda. The final influence I like to bring up is of the spiritual sense. Most people have heard the quote, "The greatest trick the devil ever played was making you think he isn't real." Everybody listening to my voice right now has encountered evil thoughts that seem so foreign, so out of character, that if you were to give it any more than a second thought, you would find yourself fearful of your own capability. When you find yourself contemplating cruelty for the sake of cruelty, vices for the sake of pleasure, and selfish maneuvers for ambition, you should know that true strength is in denying those routes, because although there's momentary pleasure in them, you chose to stick to your principles and morals. In The Satanic Delusion, written by William Ramsey, he says, "Satan knows well that they who deny his being will not be afraid of his power and influence, will not watch against his wiles and devices, will not pray to God for deliverance from the evil one, will not expect him to be trampled down under their feet if he has no existence, and consequently they will become an easy and unopposing prey to the enemy of their souls. By leading men to disbelieve and deny his existence, he throws them off their guard. He is then their complete master, and they are led captive by him at his will." We're constantly wrestling the devil over our own souls, a bout that does not end until death overtakes us. To gain the upper hand is with remembrance of God, allowing him to define objective moral values, and to adopt them immediately. It is with no doubt that in the Quran's final chapter, we are advised to be protected from such influence. As the verses state, "Say I look for shelter in the Lord of humankind, the King of humankind, the God of humankind, from the evil of the sneaking whisperer, who murmured in the hearts of humankind, of the jinn and humankind." Finally, I'd like to close out with a quote from Jesus the Messiah to his disciples. "If you are my friends and my brothers, then prepare your minds to reconcile with all the hostility and hatred coming from people. If you are not so mentally prepared, then you are not my brothers. I teach you so that you may learn, and I do not teach you to please you. You will not attain your goal till you renounce your desires and buy forbearance over that which you hate. I warn you against the evil glance, for it sows the seeds of lust in the heart of the beholder, and that is enough to tempt him. Blessed is he who beholds with 2 eyes the tempting love of lust, but does not allow his heart to err. How far is that which one has missed, and how close is that which is to come? Woe unto those begilded by vanity, should that which they loathe come to them too soon, and that which they love dearly depart, and that of which they have been warned arrive. Indeed, in the creation of these nights and days there is a lesson. Woe unto him whose entire concern is about this world only, and whose deeds are all evil and sin. How will he stand up exposed before his sustainer tomorrow? And do not talk much about other things than remembering God. Surely those who talk much other than remembering God have their hearts hardened, but they do not know. Do not engage yourselves in looking into other people's shortcomings and faults, as if you were their spies. Instead, look into ways of freeing yourselves, for surely you are possessed slaves. How often does water flow on the mountain, but it does not soften? For how long have you studied words of wisdom, but your hearts do not soften for them? Slaves of the evil people, and not of the pious. Nor are you liberated men of honor. Your example is that of the oleander, whose flower pleases the beholder, but its taste kills. Peace be with you.